It's the NUFC Thursday Show, and today's episode we're going to be looking ahead to the Southampton game, looking back at Marc Guehi's Sky Sports interview and talking about the biggest issue that Eddie Howe might face this season. Let's get into it. Hello and welcome back to the NUFC Thursday Show. Welcome back to another video. Thanks so much to everyone who joined me on last night's live stream. It's there, the season preview is there to watch back, so please go ahead and do that. Also, do check out, I'll put the link in the description to my channel update. There is going to be a little break after next week before I go to Paris for the Paralympics. Then I'll be back for the season with a slightly different makeup of videos, Newcastle United content, also some other content as well, but no less Newcastle United content. So if you're only here for Newcastle content, that is all gonna stay exactly the same. So we're gonna get straight into it. Please do continue to like, share and subscribe, by the way. Up to 605. Just want it to grow as much as it can, so please continue to like, share and subscribe if you can. But we'll get straight into it with the very first topic, and I think the obvious thing to talk about is Marc Guehi and that interview that he gave to Sky Sports. It's quite strange, isn't it, that someone with that sort of amount of speculation, a player with that amount of speculation around them, is going to talk to the media at the height of that speculation. You know, the interest from Newcastle is still there. Third bid rejected, Steve Parish said in his media round as well. Guehi wasn't directly asked about Newcastle or didn't directly answer about Newcastle, but he did sort of say that he didn't agree with Steve Parish's characterisation as a superstar and a generational talent. Very humble guy, though, is Marc Guehi. So I think this is a really interesting situation, the fact that he's even given this interview. I don't think it means a great deal. Maybe it's Palace trying again to do... I think the fact that they're playing this out so publicly, they're desperate for a bidding war. They want something to get what they want out of this deal, which is £65 million. It's a fight over £5 million effectively now. For me, this deal is still there. I think the fact that all three parties are still around the table and still keen to do a deal after three bids suggests that this deal will eventually get done if Newcastle wanted to. There are other alternatives. They have looked at other alternatives. We've discussed other alternatives. Malik Thiaw. Joachim Andersen is a player that Newcastle have been interested in. Fulham are in a process of bidding for him, and he looks like he could be quite a bit cheaper than Guehi, naturally because he's a lot older and also not English, and also not really the answer to what Newcastle's centre-back issue is. So I think that one would be interesting, but not likely. I think they want a sort of physical, pacey, powerful centre-back, which is exactly what Marc Guehi is. And I think, you know, there's a different question about whether Newcastle doing the right thing by going for Guehi and only Guehi with that large chunk of money, and we've discussed the right wing situation, and there is also an update on Miguel Almiron, which I'll get into as well. Forgot to put that in the intro, but I think this one will get done. I think the fact that it's been played out so publicly is purposely done by Palace, and they are playing mind games. Newcastle need to hold their nerve, and they'll get the player that they want if they do indeed still want him. Palace want a bidding war that isn't coming. There's a lot of interest in Guehi and a lot of admirers of Guehi, but they haven't followed through. Liverpool, it's clear that they want to go and sign a central midfielder. Manchester United have moved on from that. We've moved on from him and Branthwaite as well, and gone for De Ligt and Lenny Yoro. So Newcastle have a free run at Guehi, and Palace are actually in quite a difficult situation, I think, for this, because they're not going to get more than what Newcastle offer, because no one else is at the table. They've got 2 years on Guehi's contract. He's already rejected the talk of terms previously as well. So Newcastle can just hold their nerve here. I think that they'll get the player that they want, but it's just a question of whether they do that. I think the fans are getting a little bit touchy at the moment because it's another failed public thing, and I think again the crucial difference is Newcastle are not making this public. There's no leaks coming from anywhere at St James's Park. It's all from the Palace side, because Palace want this public. They want a bidding war that isn't coming, and I think that power play might just shift in Newcastle's favour in the next couple of days if nobody comes to the table. I think Steve Parish has played his hand, shown his hand a little bit here, and ultimately Marc Guehi will have asked to leave. I think the fact that Steve Parish has gone public, and the fact that they've put him up for media work, suggests that they're trying to throw clubs off the scent of something that is very much there. And as I say, all three parties are still very much interested in sorting a deal out. So this feels like it's something that will happen. It feels like it's something that, but only if Newcastle want it. It feels like something that is coming to a head in a positive way. Because if lots of talk about it not happening, if it wasn't going to happen, I think they wouldn't have got to 3 bids without all 3 parties being at the table. Particularly the selling club, I think would have got frustrated if they didn't get a sense that Newcastle were in and around the ballpark. They're not getting frustrated. They're just trying to eke out a little bit more and a little bit more. I think that as much as Steve Parish says there won't be a decision to make in the next couple of days, I wouldn't be surprised if there very much is. So we've got Marc Guehi as one big thing. The other thing, obviously, the other talking point is Miguel Almiron's future. There's a deal on the table for Charlotte FC, or was a deal on the table for Charlotte FC that was sort of verbally agreed with the player, but then there's sort of a movement in terms of the fact that he would have had to take a pay cut to make the move work. And I think people need to understand that, Miguel Almiron doesn't owe Newcastle United anything. He's got to look after himself. No player, any employee will look at this situation from their own perspective, and he needs to get as much money out of his career as he possibly can. It's not fair of anyone to ask him to take a pay cut to make a deal work. And Newcastle signed him on a 3.5-year contract 18 months ago. He's got 2 years to run on that. That's his prerogative to stand there and take that money because Newcastle offered it. I think that I've spoken about it on Twitter. I think he deserves so much more respect than he gets. I think it's also ridiculous to suggest that Newcastle should sell on the cheap because it doesn't benefit them. It only makes their right wing position weaker. Obviously, everybody would like to see an upgrade in that position, but at the same time, selling him for £7 million as the offer was, but actually it would be more like 5.8 because of the sell-on clause that Atlanta United had. It wouldn't make a difference. It wouldn't help with PSR. It wouldn't open up any possibilities on the right wing. All you would do is get rid of a player who can contribute something next season and another option on the right wing, and make that position weaker. It wouldn't make it stronger. And I think Newcastle should only sell Miguel Almiron if the deal is right and there's a route to improvement, and that isn't the case with that deal. But I think generally he deserves a lot more credit. I've said this on Twitter as well. Lots of players have bled the club dry over the years, mercenaries, and you cannot say that about Miguel Almiron. He's always available, never complains, always tries his hardest, and he's had some big moments at the club. That purple patch that people seem to suggest was just pure luck was a result of his ability plus a lot of confidence that Eddie Howe instilled in him, and that came from his quality. I'm not sure that he could ever reach those heights again. I think he overperformed, but I think he can absolutely reach more than he has last season. I think he had a difficult season last year, and and you can't have it both ways. He isn't lucky and then terrible. He's offered a lot under Eddie Howe, and I think he can still offer something under Eddie Howe next season. But obviously, I think everybody would agree that his time as a first choice player has come to an end. He just deserves a lot more respect than he gets, for me, in terms of the way he sort of talks about. The other suggestion that is in around is that Noni Madueke is possible, and Newcastle are interested in doing that deal. Chelsea, though, will not be held to ransom. That's the news that's come out of Chelsea this week. I think it'll be very interesting to see. They do need to sell some players. Again, it's a cat and mouse game towards the end of the window. They have turned their attention to sales, and also the fact that they brought in Pedro Neto on that side means that Raheem Sterling's now up for debate his future in terms of that, and so is Madueke. Even though, as I said in the last video, I said in the live stream last night, Madueke is rated fairly highly by Maresca. What could happen is Madueke could come in if Almiron goes out, but I don't think that Almiron is definitely going to stay. I think there is a lot of more interest than people think. It's just whether Newcastle can come up with a deal. I think they would deal at around £15 million if they could. But 7 million with a £5 million recoup is absolutely not a deal that Newcastle should be doing, I don't think. First game of the season, Southampton at home. I think this is a really, really interesting game. I think it's a game that Newcastle are strong enough to win without any major signings. They've got a strong squad back. They looked really good pressing, as I said, at the Salah Cup and the Salah Weekender. This is a real opportunity to hit the ground running. Newcastle have tended to do these jobs very, very well at St James's Park. Only a few games last season, Bournemouth, Luton, and obviously the Nottingham Forest game, when they let slip to these sort of weaker sides at St James's. That is the bread and butter for Eddie Howe, is these games at home and starting fast with everything fresh and everybody looking forward to the season. I think Newcastle will come out on top. I think that they'll start fast and win the game. Would you start, let me know in the comments, would you start Harvey Barnes on the left and Anthony Gordon on the right if there is no progress, and obviously it looks a bit unlikely now on the right hand side in terms of a signing? Or would you play Murphy, who's done really well in the pre-season, and on the right and Gordon on the left? I think that is more likely what Eddie Howe would do, but going forward I would certainly look into that right and left wing partnership, Barnes on the left and Gordon on the right, because I think it's a suggestion that might sound like you're taking a strong player out of a strong position, but actually Gordon is as effective, or almost as effective, on the right as he is on the left for me. He's that good of a player that he can accommodate that, and I would play Barnes on the left going forward. If Newcastle can't break through on a winger, that would make a lot more sense to me. I think if they do break through, it'll be on a centre-back. I think that I'm not ruling out, though, 2 new players coming in at this stage. But I think Newcastle will win this game. I think they'll have a good season, as I said on the live stream. I think top 4 is an issue, and this is where the big problem is, though. I think Newcastle's board and Newcastle's players will demand Champions League football. And when I say about players, I'm talking about Gordon, Isak, Bruno, the players that big clubs, Liverpool, Manchester City and Arsenal, are desperate to sign and would love to sign if they could. Those players will look at this situation and say, I think next season we've got to be in a position where we can challenge for the Champions League. And if they can't do that, then and if they're not in the Champions League, then maybe they'll look at their futures. But at the same time, Eddie Howe needs to be backed in the transfer market. It's very difficult for me to sit here and you as viewers to say that Newcastle have the 4th best squad in the league squad in terms of depth. You know, we talked about, and as we saw last season, that was not the case, and they haven't strengthened it. They haven't got any better in terms of numbers. So, yes, Tonali's back. Yes, Willock's back. Yes, Joe Linton's back. Yes, that pressing and that energy is back at the start of the season. I think this team, the first 11, could absolutely finish in the Champions League, but it's very difficult without a couple of signings that sort of box off a couple of different areas in the team that are a little bit weaker, that to suggest that Newcastle should be in the top 4. So as much as the club will demand it this season, as much as those players will look for it as well, I think Eddie Howe would be very much within his rights to turn around and say, look, you haven't given me the squad to do that job. So that'll be ramping up the tension. So Newcastle go into this season with a lot of positivity. They go into the season with a lot of momentum, I think, from the Sella Cup. And as I explained in my BBC article, they've put back a lot of these issues that were dominating the early part of the window and dominating the early part of the summer. But those things could rear their head again if Newcastle starts slowly, or if they don't get any transfers in. I think there is a sort of knife edge element to that. It'll be interesting, but I think if Newcastle do start well and get at least one major signing in, they'll have a very, very good season. Like, share and subscribe. I'll be back hopefully on Saturday to react live to the Southampton game before I head to Paris. Final Monday and Thursday show next week. Thanks very much, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.